Among the geologically recent turbulence of the upstart Alps, the ancient Nock Mountains of southern Austria stand calm, islands in a heaving sea of stone. Here in Carinthia is the country's oldest landscape. Untouched by the mighty glaciers of the Ice Age or by today's major traffic routes, this region has been miraculously preserved, wild and isolated, home of 1,000 secrets. But the Nock Mountains are not a pristine wilderness. For centuries, people have lived on this land and loved these mountains. Generations of hill farmers have ensured that the mountains remain to this day what they always were. Green islands in a sea of stone. The craggy, often threatening panorama of the surrounding Alps stands in stark contrast to the gentle skyline of the Nock Mountains. Their slopes and domes are gentle and sunny and easily accessible. Yet they are higher than they seem, rising to 7,500 feet. At that height, the snow lingers until late May. Winter is coming to an end, and so is the patience of the common frogs. After a winter break of 7 months, they're on their way to the most urgent and important meeting of the year. It's mating time. The venue is a mountain lake 6,000 feet up. The ice opened up only a day ago, and, as if at an order, all the frogs within a radius of a mile or so have begun to move. The long, slow march to the lake may take days, the most dangerous days of the year. On the snowfields, the frogs are easy targets for predators. Common frogs are found throughout most of Europe, from the Pyrenees to the North Cape. In the mountains, they climb higher than any other amphibian. The males are generally the first to arrive, and many simply can't wait for the females. Impatiently and passionately, they embrace anything that moves, other males, and sometimes even fish. The snowfields can be killing fields. An eagle owl surveys the scene. For the frogs, death comes silently and suddenly. Under the strong sun of May, meltwater swells the lake, and along deep, calm stretches the frogs travel more safely in the water than on the snow. But even the waterway is not without its risks. Close as these two are to their destination, they've somehow caught the wrong boat. but nothing can make the male loosen his iron grip. A male frog would sooner be strangled by a rival than release his mate, for a very good reason. At the mating ground, a large chorus of males competes for the attention of the arriving females. They outnumber the females by at least 4 to 3. The frogs call through their noses with their mouths shut. The booming sound is produced by a bladder in the throat. As soon as a female has laid some of her 600 to 2,000 eggs and they've been fertilized, she changes partners. The noisy orgy lasts 2 days and nights. Then it's over as suddenly as it began. Lower down on the edge of the mountain forest, there's another mating ground called a lek. Day after day, long before sunrise, this is the meeting place of up to 15 male black grouse. For countless generations, an impressive ritual has been carried out in this arena. Each male defends his own small territory. The strongest individuals occupy the center of the meadow, where the hens prefer to land. But only in the main mating season, during a few weeks in April and May, is there any hope of females visiting the lek. The males stay on by themselves until late June. Often the threatening and posturing ends in a fierce but bloodless ritual fight. The opponents aim at the red patches above each other's eyes, the bright badge of maleness. There seems to be no winner or loser, as if the fight were an end in itself. The display ends abruptly when the larches light up in the first rays of the sun. Down in the valleys around the Nock Mountains, on the shores of Lake Ossiach and Lake Millstatt, early June brings the first hot summer days. But up here, on the high plateau, Carinthia's second spring has only just begun. For half a year, the thin soil was frozen solid. Now a wealth of wildflowers reflects the intense light of the June sky. Flowers specialize either in color or scent. The fragrance of the Celtic valerian once filled the harem houses of Turkish palaces. Fences as signs of human presence harmonize with this landscape as if they grew here naturally. In a sense, they have, for everything the mountain farmers have erected here for centuries is only reshaping nature. Bending spruce branches in fire is an ancient technique. As early as 5,000 years ago, fences built in this way looked very much like today's ring fences in the Nock Mountains. For the farmers, fence making is the first long-awaited chance in the year to go up to the Alpine pastures. Before sunrise, as the night breeze falls silent, a solemn stillness fills the air. On such a peaceful morning in early June, the first herds of red deer arrive on the high ridges. Silent as ghosts, they suddenly appear. 30, 50, perhaps 100 stags, harbingers of the grand spectacle that the sun and the mountains are about to enact. These have always been the summer pastures of the red deer in the Alps. Their natural habitat is not the forest, where they have been pushed by the expanding presence of man, but the open grasslands along big rivers and high above the tree line. By the end of May, the females give birth, usually to one calf, rarely twins. This calf is only 3 weeks old and has already followed its mother on the long climb. Soon, the females and their calves will form a herd of their own. During the summer, the females occupy the whole mountain. Males have no business here. The hill next door is the kindergarten of the chamois. Year after year, 20 to 30 mothers come here to spend the spring with their kids. Young chamois are very social animals. They play for hours away from their mothers, until hunger brings them home. Although the kids are suckled for 6 months, they soon begin to nibble alpine herbs. They stay with their mothers for a full year, leaving only a few days before her next kid is born. This inhabitant of the boulder fields above the tree line is anything but social. The stone martin needs a rambling territory all of his own. He patrols up to the highest peaks. The stone martin is a nocturnal hunter which passes the day sleeping in one of thousands of crevices between the boulders. But now the nights are short, and he must hunt far into the day. A young mountain hare would be welcome prey, not just to the stone martin, but to eagle owls, golden eagles, and foxes. Hunted by so many other animals, he must lead a secret life, spending most of the day under cover. The presence of the martin turns ground breeders like the rock partridge into masters of camouflage. The rock partridge lives in the southern Alps. The Nock region is one of its northern outposts. In summer, groups of stags look the image of harmony and peace, but in fact an arms race is going on. In February, they lost their horns. New ones grew within 4 months, but the tender skin on the growing horns forces the stags to be extremely cautious. As soon as they feel the warmth of the morning sun, the herd seeks a resting place to chew the cud. Then it's time to change the guard. The marmots take possession of the field. Only the warm sun will tempt them from their dens. Like the deer, they have just one object during the short mountain summer: to get fat for a long and bitter winter. Especially for the young ones, the growth they put on in summer will make the difference between life and death in winter. While deer calves have to double their birth weight in 6 months and keep growing in winter, a baby marmot must increase its birth weight by 50 times if it is to survive its first hibernation. Marmots live in family clans organized around a permanent pair. Only when they're sexually mature, at the age of 2 or 3, do they leave the family. Like the marmots, the stone marten is a ground dweller, although he never digs his own den. The marten is not a pure carnivore. He likes to eat berries and mushrooms, but there won't be any until midsummer. At this time of year, his daily diet consists mainly of small rodents, snow voles, for instance. In the labyrinth of the boulder field, the snow vole lives on grasses, herbs, and plant seeds throughout summer and winter. The need to find food forces the vole to leave its safe hiding places time and again. The marten finds his prey by scent, but the swirling wind confuses him. To make things worse, the entire area smells of voles. To pick out the freshest scent in this confusion is anything but easy. Solitary places like this, where a herd of wild deer can have a peaceful siesta, have become rare in Europe. But in the high mountains, such idylls are short-lived. Dark shadows may threaten at any time. Cumulus clouds rise at a speed of almost 100 miles per hour. A friendly sky can suddenly change its face. Within minutes, summer temperatures may drop to an almost winter chill. At times like this, the animals are quick to leave the mountaintops. In contrast to the high Alps, bad weather quickly passes over these rounded summits. Even if the sun is shrouded in heavy clouds, its rays soon glide over the grassy hillsides like a passing smile. Time flies like the wind, the saying goes. The windswept sky never stops changing for a moment. Yet the changes in this landscape over time, in millions or even only hundreds of years, are difficult to grasp. The slate on this Arctic summit was once river silt in a swampy lowland where subtropical plants flourished. Seed ferns, giant horsetails, and ancient trees called lepidodendrons, 280 million years before the dawn of mankind. Compared to such gigantic geological changes, man's impact on the land has only scratched the surface. In many high valleys in the Nock Mountains, abandoned mines have been falling to ruin for centuries, or sometimes only decades. Mountain meadows and forests are slowly closing over mounds of iron ore and open-cast mines, healing the wounds. Today, it's hard to imagine that even the most remote valleys of the Nock Mountains once bustled with industry. The iron ore that was extracted by a single miner gave work and food to 10 other men and their families, lumberjacks, charcoal burners, and steel workers. Miners worked this land a century before Columbus discovered America. In the mid-1700s, 1 in 4 Carinthians lived from the iron industry. In 1836, the first modern decimer converter on the European continent was installed here in the Nock Mountains. But modernization came too little and too late. Although the iron mills in the Nock Mountains produced steel of superb quality, they were already doomed, depending on expensive charcoal for fuel when elsewhere in Europe, especially in Britain and Germany, coal mining had begun on a grand scale. The more desperately the mills increased their output, the more quickly they depleted their only source of fuel, the forests. The demand for fuel for the furnaces and hammer mills and for timber for mining threatened to destroy the forests of Central Europe, even in remote places where people had never penetrated before. Under pressure from the increasingly liberal economy of the late 18th century, the laws that had protected the forests were relaxed. The iron industry could now deforest any land it could reach, from the pine forests of the Nock Mountains to the beech forests further south. Transporting the timber from the mountains was difficult and expensive. This was the only reason that the forests in the central Nock area were spared to this day. Most of the timber was made into charcoal where it was felled. Lumberjacks and charcoal burners worked hand in hand, stacking the wood into round heaps or long stacks, covering it with earth and letting it smoulder for days. Although the charcoal kilns all over the country smoked day and night, they could no longer satisfy the demand of the blast furnaces. Even though the forests were plundered, the iron industry became unprofitable by the mid-19th century. There was never any great profit in mountain farming, but the mountain farmers managed their land so that it was preserved from generation to generation. For 700 years, farmers have enjoyed continuous grazing rights in the Nock Mountains. They have driven their cattle to the summer pastures for much longer than that, and they may hope to do so far into the future. Until about 20 years ago, most of these summer cabins were mountain dairies. The ruins of giant stone barns high up on the plateaus are picturesque reminders of those days. Today, the farmers rarely drive dairy cows up the mountains. The number of animals and grazing days is controlled by ancient rules to avoid harming the vulnerable upland meadows. Nevertheless, centuries of grazing has changed the face of the land, especially the forest, which was cleared to increase the available pasture. Wherever sparsely wooded mountain forests were used for grazing, natural recovery was suppressed, and only aging trees remained. These sparse survivors are long-lived trees, the last remnants of a once dense forest. In large areas of the Nock Mountains, the tree line is typically formed by arolla or stone pines. Some of these ancient solitary trees are 500 years old. In their youth, they were part of the forest. This old pine has survived centuries of storms. One day, it too will fall. Where the forest was cleared, azaleas have often taken its place. Even though there are no trees left, this wealth of blossoms reveals an ancient forest floor. Grazing has left its impact also on the grassland above the original tree line. The cattle eat certain plants and avoid others, so that only a few species flower here. The exact opposite is true of hay meadows. The scythe does not distinguish between species. Mowing gives weaker competitors a chance of space and light. The result is a colourful diversity that surpasses anything found in primeval meadows untouched by mankind. Shafts of the August midday sun penetrate the cool cathedral space of the sprawling forests of the Nock Mountains, a mystical realm rarely disturbed by man. This is the home of the pine marten. In contrast to the stone marten, which avoids large forests and even follows man into cities, the pine marten is shy and secretive. Its hunting ground is the light and shade mosaic of the forest floor, where there are plenty of small rodents. but it's most at home in the third dimension. The pine marten is such an agile acrobat that it can chase even red squirrels to exhaustion. This young marten has just left his mother. 4 months old, he's fully grown and looking for a territory of his own. Each of these giant trees is like a separate world. They will often remain standing after death for another 50 or 100 years, full of a wide variety of life. Such dead giants are encrusted with lichens, with long lichen beards hanging from their twigs. In the hollow trunks of old trees like this, the marten finds places to sleep, a new one almost every day. Someone is watching. The marten has few enemies, but the eagle owl is one, and the most dangerous. But after a successful hunt, the eagle owl sees the marten not as prey, but merely as a nuisance. The black woodpecker is the architect of the mountain forest. The marten, like many other forest animals, was raised in an old woodpecker hole, carved out in weeks of hard work. In rotten timber, the woodpecker probes for ant and beetle larvae. Insect epidemics are rare in natural forests, partly because of the activities of woodpeckers. At a small forest lake on a calm and sunny day, an astonishing metamorphosis takes place. For 2 to 3 years, these dragonfly larvae have lived in the water. Now they emerge into a strange new world. Soon they will leave their heavy armor as elegant flying insects. The journey from one element to the next is short but dangerous, and it may lead directly into enemy territory. Only reeds that are completely surrounded by water are safe. Here, dragonflies begin their second life in the air. Only when its wings are fully spread and hardened can this hawker dragonfly take off to safety. But many a maiden flight ends even before it has begun. For the ants, there's another attraction nearby. The secretion of the sundew smells as sweet as honey. But its tentacles are an insidious trap. From the bodies of captured insects, the sundew extracts the nourishment it cannot get from the wet peat soil around the lake. Until late September, the hawker dragonflies hunt for gnats from the water level to the treetops. The humming of their mating flights fills the autumn air until the last day of their short lives. The darkest and most solitary places in the forest are the haunt of the capercaillie. It's a shy bird, the very emblem of wild woodland. Each of its feathers is a watchful eye, or so the hunters say. As long as there is no snow, the capercaillie searches the ground for seeds, berries, herbs, and pine buds. He's especially attracted to ant hills, ploughing into them with his powerful beak. Ant pupae are the main food for the young chicks. As with all the birds of the grouse family, there's a striking difference between the sexes. The female, being a ground breeder, is perfectly camouflaged. The males are arrayed in iridescent colours. This is the time of the autumn courtship, triggered by the length of the day, which is now exactly the same as during the mating season in spring. Capercaillies and black grouse perfume themselves regularly with the acid produced by wood ants to keep their feathers free of parasites. The autumn courtship will end with the first proper snowfall. It won't be long now. The days are already very short. In the long, dark night, the eyes of the eagle owl, the biggest of all owls, can see 100 times better than a human eye. From his perch, nothing that moves on the forest floor escapes his attention. The mouse has no way of knowing that it's being watched from the darkness and that death is only seconds away. It's still night when, deep in the lonely heart of the Knock Mountains, at the foot of one of the highest peaks, the keeper of an ancient inn builds his daily fire. For more than 2 centuries, this mountain cabin has been a bathhouse. Baths were prepared in this very place 100 years before the cabin existed. Rocks from the river near the cabin are heated to almost 2,000 degrees in the fire. Day after day, the innkeeper carries half a ton of rocks from the river to the fireplace, into the bath and out again. No one really knows the secret of these rocks. It is known, however, that they pass on not only heat to the cold spring water in the tubs, but also compounds of sulfur, iron, and possibly even radon. Tubs like these were once used in the open air, out here in the forest on the river banks, 7 hours' walk from the nearest village. Many peasants came from even further away. Such joyful gatherings in such a solitary place troubled the imagination of the high clergy. They ordered the bathtubs to be burned and the well destroyed. Although the clergy's worries are understandable, anyone who has enjoyed one is glad that the traditional bath is still to be found here.
Fertig.
Ist das schön warm?
Einfach super.
It takes 7 baths to create the invigorating effect, and they say that 27 will make a cripple dance at Christmas.
Das finde ich echt nichts zu sagen. Das kann eher sogar noch wärmer sein, finde ich.
Also ganz natürlich so heiß.
Anything this soothing to body and soul is not easily forgotten. Something that's true also of the whole of the Nock Mountains. Autumn prepares a colourful farewell that makes leaving difficult and fills the winter with a longing to return. The departing herds of cattle are replaced by herds of red deer. After spending the summer on separate mountains, the males and females meet on the rutting grounds where the grass stays green for a few more weeks. Then they too will seek lower ground in the forested valleys. In these mountains, man is only a summer visitor. Now there are few, if any, signs of human presence. Winter takes us back 10,000 years to a time before man set foot in these high mountains. The original inhabitants are now left to themselves, and for 7 silent months the green islands of the Nock Mountains become a white wilderness.